We welcome you all to the south end zone of Kyle Field on this January afternoon. I'm Will Johnson with our Director of Athletics, Ross Bjork. It is yet again another town hall, our first one of 2022. We took the holidays off, so it's good to see you again, first of all. And I trust Christmas went well for the family and everybody.
It was nice. Nice to – obviously we wish we were in Jacksonville for the bowl game, but things happened, unfortunately, for our young men. But, no, great to sort of decompress and – kind of get re-energized and get your spirit, sort of re-galvanized into the new year. So I'm still getting used to saying 2022.
Yeah, and everything you write. You write January 25th, and you'll still write 2021 on it sometimes.
I mean, it's been 25 days. You'd think I'd learn by now, but I still, when I sign something, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's 2022.
Same here, yeah.
But no, excited and ready to go. Absolutely.
Well, as you know, and I think most people can see already, we're -1 today.
That's right.
We've got travel to Baton Rouge with men's basketball, and Andrew Monaco is on his way with that basketball team to LSU as they take on the Tigers in Baton Rouge tomorrow evening. Best of luck to Buzz Williams and the guys. Got off to a great start, still right there in the hunt in the SEC and for the postseason.
That's right. And knowing Andrew, he'll watch this or listen to it later.
I'm not ruling out a question coming from maybe an Andrew M or an A Monaco. I mean, I can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
I just don't rule it out.
Andrew's he's a student. He's a student of the game, so he's going to be paying attention somewhere.
He's going to pick up something here that he's going to use on the broadcast tomorrow night.
That's right.
I feel it.
There we go.
I feel it.
Okay.
But, good line of questioning from the 12th man, as always. And remember, if you have a question for Ross in the future, you can go to 12thman.com/askross. You can do so at the official website of Texas A&M Athletics. But we had plenty come in through that platform for this show. Also had one come in from Twitter, so the 12th man did respond. Before we get to the line of questioning, though, Ross, you just spent some time at the Ncaa annual convention, and we'll have a question that sort of centers around what you were doing there. But first and foremost on the docket there was a vote essentially on the Ncaa Constitution. And for those out there, can you kind of tell us what last week meant, what that meant that we were voting on the Ncaa Constitution? That was big-time stuff.
Yeah. We've got a couple questions about basketball in here, and unfortunately, because I was at the NCAA convention, I was not here at the Kentucky game. So I didn't see Reed Arena in action like that. I watched it on TV, of course, and paid attention to every single play. But I missed all the the atmosphere and the energy that was here. So yeah, we were in Indianapolis for the annual. There's an annual convention every year, but not every year does athletic directors do they have to go. And so I remember going in 2014 when we voted on changing legislation to have the autonomy schools, the Power 5 schools have more voting power. So I remember that convention. I went like in 2016 or 17, and then I went in 2022. So we don't have to go every year. This year was pivotal. And really what it does, the Constitution, the new Constitution, it went from like 43 pages down to 18, which still sounds like a lot. But you're talking about governing college sports, so it needs to be accurate and it needs to be all-encompassing as much as it can. But we wanted, as a membership, we wanted to shorten the Constitution to really get at the heart of what should college sports be all about, and then what should be the role of the NCAA. So what the Constitution did was it left Division III and Division II primarily the same, and gave them a little more autonomy, but primarily the same. But it really carved out Division I, where we can create a new governing body, a new governing board within Division I. We can have more autonomy to then go pursue Division I ideals and not get hung up by things that don't apply to Division II or Division III. So it allowed Division I to have even more autonomy, but now the real work begins. So the vote essentially was kind of perfunctory. It was sort of routine. There was a little bit of debate. There was some folks that stood up and made some points here and there, but it was an 80% in favor of changing the Constitution. 20% were not in favor. Now the work begins. Now the work begins to redefine what Division I should be all about. Do we need to deregulate recruiting rules and other rules around the NCAA rule book? How do we change enforcement? What does the scholarship model look like? should there be more things allowed if you can afford to do it? Things like that are all going to now come on the table. So between now and August, there's going to be a lot of work, and a lot of people are going to hear things about, oh, Division I is now changing this. Division I is now adding this. Division I is deregulating this. So you're going to hear more about it. But last week set the stage for even more change that will benefit college athletics.
Is it along the lines of what we've kind of heard some folks say, even in Division I, the largest division, maybe some schools don't exactly think alike in what they can do and resources and things like that.
Right. So obviously a Division III program and I played Division II football. Emporia State is not anywhere near close to Texas A&M in terms of the resources and the brand power and what we'd like to achieve. Now, the fundamentals are largely the same, right? You go to class and you play. Those are the same, but the components around it are a lot different. And so this allows Division I to have even more. And then within Division I, there's 351 members. So there's a big difference between Quinnipiac, let's say, and I'm not picking on them, but Quinnipiac and Texas A&M, right? Or Florida Gulf Coast and Alabama.
Yeah.
There's a big difference there. And so how do you coalesce around, hey, look, if Alabama and Texas A&M can do this, we shouldn't necessarily be held back by votes of 100 other members. Allow us to do those things. Allow it to be permissible. Maybe there's a floor, if you will, that allows certain things to happen, and if you want to go above that, then you're allowed to do it. So that's really what's on the table for this Division I process from here.
So when we get to our line of questioning from the 12th man here, obviously, we were going to start with Sutton Turner. I think, yeah, you have to kick off 2022 with Sutton Turner, class of '93.
Sutton
College
is
Station.
ever present.
Well, Sutton had stockpiled
he
some
did.
questions.
He did. We had to punt. We didn't do the December one due to some other things. But so yeah, he was stockpiling. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, but he had one that is kind of a nice extension of the conversation of what we were discussing.
Yeah.
The NCAA annual convention and the vote on the NCAA Constitution. And Sutton just submitted this January. He kind of had to go parenthetical here and say, I don't really remember what I've submitted in the past, so he had to get a January one in case, just in case. But it's a good one. And we'll start with Sutton here because some of this was in the news recently as you were out in Indianapolis.
Right.
The ACC and others blew up the playoff expansion, essentially, he says, until at least this TV contract ends. Do you think there will be a new set of pressure on non-SEC schools to join the SEC? And if so, is there a tipping point that he puts in quotations in additional schools joining the SEC that domino into a super conference?
Yeah, there's been a lot that's happened around the college football playoff expansion. And really all of this started back in June of 2021 when there was a group that studied expansion and they came up with a model where it was going to be 12 teams and there were some parameters. And then the other commissioners were supposed to review that and essentially were going to approve it maybe sometime in like July or August of last year. Well, then you had expansion. You had conference realignment that happened. Everybody hit the pause button. There's people that are now in commissioners' roles that were not in the room, if you will, when all of this discussion started a couple years ago. So they had to get caught up to speed. And so now essentially hit the pause button on any sort of CFP expansion before the end of the current contract, which goes through the 2025 season.
Right.
So to get specific on his question, do you think there'll be new pressure for non-SEC schools to join the SEC because of all of this? I don't think so. I think 16 is where we need to sit. I think until we get through some of this NCAA transformation process, to me, we need to be comfortable with where we are. One, we don't even know when Texas and Oklahoma will come in for sure. 2025 is what we're modeling and planning for, but does that happen sooner? So I don't think there's going to be any new pressures for programs to want to look at the SEC. One, there's contracts in place in other leagues. So who's even available? It's not that desirable in terms of available in the marketplace. So I think the SEC should sit tight. I don't see a lot of people reaching out to us and saying, hey, we'd like to join because of their contractual relationships. And then Sutton asked a very astute question. Is there a tipping point for additional schools joining the SEC that might domino into a super conference. I don't know if it'll be college football playoff related. That would be a tipping point. I think as we go through this Division I transformational process, you're going to have more tipping points in those categories where maybe there needs to be more alignment with more like-minded schools, if you will. I think you would see something like that come out of any sort of Division I transformation than you would see out of a CFP lack of movement or expanding. Maybe the decision is only expand to 8. Maybe that becomes the new proposal. I don't think that would be a tipping point. I think it's going to be more around what is our NCAA, what's our identity as college athletics, what's our kind of our business model around the student athlete, what's their scholarship model look like. I think you would see that as a tipping point versus the playoff, if you will. So I think my guess, and again, it's a guess because things can happen rapidly, is that I think realignment is stable for now. But I think as we go through this transformation, that's where you could see people say, hey, wait a second. This isn't the model that we desire because we want this. And are there enough schools that are like-minded in this category that would want to change that model? So I think we're still several steps away from any sort of tipping point. But he brings up a great point, interrelated to the CFP, but also interrelated to what we just did last week with the NCAA Constitution and now this review in Division I.
And in some way, shape, or form, people always want to talk about who's going to join what conferences.
Right.
It's
because it's fascinating.
It is.
I mean,
yeah.
people track it. I mean, it's fascinating when it happens. I mean, think of the news stories. Obviously, what happened this summer was, I mean, front and center, for weeks. And then you're still seeing the domino effect. I mean, last week I was with my friend who's the athletic director at Stony Brook in Long Island.
Yeah.
And they just left their conference. And he was in meetings. He was in NCAA meetings, but he was also in meetings with his old conference and meetings with his new conference. And so the domino effect of just a single move can have ripple effects for months and years. So it's pretty fascinating, and people love to follow it.
Yeah, certainly is. And now we move to a trio of basketball questions. As we mentioned, Buzz Williams and the men headed for Baton Rouge. They'll play LSU tomorrow night at the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. Good luck to Coach and the guys, and that's where Andrew Monaco, our friend, is heading out there with them. Basketball's off to an excellent start. I guess you kind of crossed the midway point right now as far as the overall schedule, really getting to the meat of the SEC schedule, and they're playing pretty well. So let's go with some basketball questions here. We got this question a little while back, I feel. It's from Jim Gentry in Temple, Texas. He referenced this a while back, dealing with a curtain of distraction within our crowd and the student section. It's something they do at Arizona State. If you haven't seen it, they kind of open a curtain when the opponent shoots a free throw.
Google it.
Yeah, it's for distraction. And
curtain of distraction.
Yeah. He's asking for a second time.
Yeah.
When are we going to get one?
Did this come from Jim before?
I believe it did. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize. But I believe Jim from Temple sent this in the first time.
Is there any tape on how I answered it before?
I
don't know. What did I say before?
Yeah.
No. Here when I saw this question, the first thing that came to mind is we need to remodel Reed Arena, which is a question that we have in here.
That's next.
And what I mean by that is we need seats that are closer behind the basket. I think before you could, again, I've seen our students be really creative. Sometimes they like stand one way, and then as the person's getting ready to shoot, they shift over to the left or right. I almost got my cord caught up. So I've seen us do some creative things like that. But the challenge that we have is there's a gap of 12 to 15 feet between the backside of the basket and the front row. And I wish we had students closer. And so as we look at remodeling Reed Arena, I think those are the things that have to come into play is how do we get our students more engaged in the atmosphere for basketball. So, look, we changed a lot of things this year. I don't know if a lot of people have noticed, but I think there's more interactive music. There's more hype music. We're using the DJ more, if you will, inside Reed Arena to keep the crowd pumped up. Our yell leaders, obviously, are traditional, and they do a great job. but even they realize that, hey, we need to make basketball a better environment. So I think we've done some things to be more creative. And a curtain of distraction, hey, if it works, great. I just think there's a distance there that may not allow it to be exactly like Arizona State. So, hey, let's challenge. Hey, Jim, let's start a social media campaign, challenge our students, get the Reed Rowdies involved, and hey, let's see what they can come up with.
And I should have done this before we started, and maybe I'll update this for Jim the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's check what the opponent's free throw percentage is against Arizona State in their home gym, and we'll check that out. And if it works,
then
if they're shooting poorly,
we need to,
hey, we're all for
bring
it.
that up.
Let's do that. Sticking with basketball, and you mentioned you would like to see those students closer to that court over at Reed Arena.
Yeah.
And Aggies today from Rockwall is asking simply, when is Reed getting redone?
It's funny. During the Kentucky game, after the Kentucky game, again, we had some challenges on game day with seating and things like that, and that's what I kept getting is, when will Reed be redone? When can we renovate Reed? When can we refurbish? And, I always say in facilities are about time and money. It takes time, and obviously you have to have the money to do it. And so because we've been in this pause, because we've had COVID, it's hard to believe it's almost 2 years. We've had to hit the pause button on several things around the athletic facility world. And one of those is really doing a comprehensive study and review of Reed Arena. So it's on the list. I don't have an exact time frame. We have talked to the university about, is this a university athletic department partnership? Because that building is used by graduation, by breakaway. There's a lot of events in there outside of athletics. And so what kind of funding model could you come up with? What kind of design elements? What's appropriate to maintain graduation? So I believe Reed will be answered soon, but there's a lot of pieces that take place. And again, I still haven't been able to answer the question, is it a renovation, or do you actually look at possibly a new building? So I think you still have to be able to answer that question as well. Is it, again, a renovation, which would be, I think, a great facility, or, hey, is it time that you look at a new venue? And you keep every option on the table as you study these things. And so time and money is what goes into facilities, but it's definitely something that we're focused on. And once we get to it, then I think we'll have a great plan one way or another.
And R. Hill from Twitter, he had a Reed Arena question, and he referenced the Kentucky game, asking, how do you make sure Reed Arena is prepared for a big game? He referenced that a long line of students outside before the game, but I'm also kind of like, well, that's a lot of interest in that basketball game if you got a long line of students outside.
I think there's a couple things. One, you love the enthusiasm that our students were there. They were standing in line. So I don't think that's a bad look by any means, because I think it shows excitement. I had videos sent to me of people pulling up, and students are wrapped, for blocks and blocks. So I think that does create excitement, urgency. Now, what happened with that record crowd is it exposed some things operationally that we need to get better on, that we need to tighten up on. We need to communicate better. So we had a deep dive debrief after that game to say, okay, we need to make sure that our expectations for basketball game performance are at the highest level. And we don't want to take any shortcuts. How do we make sure we have the best experience possible? So it did expose a few things moving forward, but we can clean those things up, and they're fixable. And I love the fact that we had 6,000 students that we allowed in the building, and that's the most ever. Yeah, we had to turn some people away. Yeah, we had some confusion when people got inside. But again, we can fix those things, and the key takeaway is people want to watch this team.
Right.
This is a fun team. You were entertained when you came to that game. You'll be entertained when we play South Carolina on Saturday. Get to Reed. I wasn't here. You were here. Matt is manning the controls here. When Reed was going early, right, in the Gillespie era, it was the place to be. Let's get it back to that, and we know Aggies can do it. So
feels like it's trending that direction.
It's good to have these problems when people say, "Hey, I want it to be better," because it was packed. Those are good problems to have.
No doubt. And we had a couple more here from the 12th man, and going a little bit long form on these next two. And first of all, Sandy Ncaa is class of '82, and we always ask Aggies to tell us where you're from when you submit a question. Well, she says Fredericksburg / soon to be Bryan. And Sandy starts her question by saying, "Happy 2022. It's 40 years since she left Aggieland. Only fitting that I am coming home. Can't wait to be home and get involved and support the programs." Bryan College Station ought to be pretty proud, because if you can pull somebody out of Fredericksburg, Texas over there in the Hill Country, you're doing something pretty well down here. But Sandy, congratulations to you on your move and getting back home. But she asks, my marketing mind is having the hardest time understanding why our school colors are now maroon and gray. From the gray opportune background for postgame pressers to maroon and gray uniforms in various sports, this week's reveal of the retro basketball uniform, which was worn against Kentucky, that was not maroon and white, was the icing on the cake for her. I get all the reasons for Adidas to do it, because they're not the Just Do It brand. But that doesn't mean we should do it. We still have whiteouts, thankfully, and the 12th man towels are still white.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, right? It's based the eye of the beholder, right? There's some people that love our gray uniforms. I mean, we wore the Texas Aggie uniforms against Kentucky last week, and I mean, I got between seating issues and uniforms, people love those uniforms, right? I mean, so sort of eye of the beholder, but maroon and white, those are our colors. Obviously, we're going to stick to that in a very traditional way, but then you also have to have balance. I mean, you have to be able to recruit to your uniform culture and what you're trying to do. Basketball, we can change some things out. I think we have a little more flexibility there. So we're going to continue to try to be cutting edge. We're going to work with Adidas. Adidas knows that we want to be more on the traditional side, but also we need to, again, be on that cutting edge side. So I think it's a balance as we look at all of this. One of the things when we talk to Schloss, we ask him about the maroon pinstripes. Are we going to keep those? He's like, I don't think so. So uniforms change, uniforms evolve, but I can assure you, Sandy, that when you move to Aggieland, you will see a lot of maroon and white with a mix of other things that hopefully are cutting edge. And I do believe we also have a maroon backdrop for press conferences.
I've seen that.
I've seen that. I think we have one over in basketball. So, again, we have one maroon. We have one that's gray. So, again, it's a balance, but we understand her point, and we're always going to lean on the traditional side for sure.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome home as you move back to Bryan College Station. Tay Campbell, class of '91, is from Taylor, Texas, and he's got a question about the Aggie War Hymn. He involves lyrics in his question. I'm not willing to sing. I don't think you are either, but we can explain what he's talking about here. So let me start with the question.
This is interesting. This is an interesting
it's a good
conversation.
It's good to bring up, Tay, and we appreciate the question. And, again, Tay is class of '91. He says, Mr. Bjork, has there been any talks about formally and deliberately reinstating the original words to the Aggie War Hymn? The history of why we sing the second verse twice goes back to the 70s, when that was our lone focus, meaning lone focus probably the University of Texas there. I believe today, and for a number of years now, we have moved way past that, and our war hymn gives too much credit and focus to, as he calls, what you always call the rival here, the Sips. But I'd love for the original words to be deliberately reinstated and return our focus to where it belongs, on Texas A&M and the Aggies. He then lists out the lyrics
of the first verse.
Of the first verse. Now, you hear at all of our athletic events, when the war hymn is sung, the second verse refers to the University of Texas, and you hear the lines, "Goodbye to Texas University, so long to the orange and white." Since we're not going to sing here, the first verse after Hullabaloo Connect begins with, "All hail to dear old Texas A&M, rally around maroon and white." And then there are differences as you go on from there. He is asking about, could we sing the first verse
making that
more?
The focal point. Like I said, I think it's a fascinating conversation. And I think, obviously, the words to the war hymn have not changed. It is the focus on the second verse. So it's not really reinstating the original words. It's more of, hey, you would change the the narrative, if you will, in the venue where everybody's going to sing the first verse, not the second verse. So his question about has there been any talks about it, I have not been involved in any talks about that. I think it's something that our yell leaders obviously would want to study, because they're the ones that guide everybody and direct everybody on game day. It's something that I'm gonna check out. I'm gonna talk to Memo, our yell leader, and say, hey, have you guys ever talked about this? Is there a focus on this? Is this a priority? Would it matter? So it hasn't been a conversation, but Tay brought it up, and I'd be curious to see what other Aggies think.
Yeah.
As people talk about this, and I can't say I would disagree with them about returning the focus, where it belongs.
Mm-hmm.
But we also now know that they're coming into the SEC, and we're going to be playing them on a regular basis in all of our sports.
Mm-hmm.
So you're bringing back the rivalry, right, in a very big way. And so does it apply when you play them, in those games, and you sing the first verse in other games? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it's a very interesting conversation for sure.
And the only time I've heard this first verse is if you're at a formal event and the singing cadets are there, they will usually sing this first verse. And maybe this would be good research too, but I am aware of in the 1960s they tried to get the students here at Kyle Field at a football game to sing this first verse. It didn't take. They wanted to continue with their jab at the University of Texas, and it did not take. So, but you're right.
You probably need to ask some folks like Sam Torn.
Sam Torn would be a great one to ask. I
some
think
yell
he
leaders
was
that
there
were here
when that was all attempted.
Yeah,
and he might be a good one to research and ask on that matter. But
yeah.
thank you, Tay, for that.
It's a great point that he brings up.
Yeah. Before you go, though, that's the line of questioning from the 12th man. It's always fun when you get into February and then you roll into March and you could go over to that West Campus.
Wow.
We talk about it all the time. You get the baseball and softball teams in action. You could get an outdoor track meet. You could get the basketball teams in the home stretch of their season.
Tennis.
Mitchell Tennis Center is out there. And we're about to get into that time. But just for the 12th man out there, get ready, because once mid-February gets here, for the next month, that West Campus is buzzing. And it's exciting to get all these sports cranked up, which coincides with that home stretch for both of our basketball teams.
Think about it. We're going to be playing softball 2 weeks from this Friday, and then baseball 3 weeks from this Friday.
That's right.
And then you're right. There is several weekends where there's a ton of overlap with track and tennis and basketball and obviously softball and baseball. So, no, that's what it's all about, to be able to hop around and support the Aggies and see our spring sports in action. Obviously, last year we didn't have full capacity in our venues. The year before, obviously, we're in the midst of shutting down sports in the middle of March, and so we didn't have – so I think just like football and just like we've seen in basketball, not just the Kentucky game, but when we played Texas in women's basketball, we played them in volleyball, we had record crowds. We had unbelievable attendance. And so I think you're going to see people – come out and support and yell for the Aggies like we've never seen. So baseball is going to be packed. We're out of season tickets. Softball is going to be packed. People are going to come out to track meets. So it's going to be a lot of fun this spring.
Yeah,
can't wait.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Can't wait. It's West Campus is the place to be once you get mid-February and on into March. So much you can catch. It's like sport hopping, like you said.
Right.
You just walk around.
It's not good for our announcers or our 12th man productions people and people that have to cover, like, oh my gosh, we have to run the video board at softball while we're also broadcasting the baseball game, and then, oh, by the way, we have a basketball game. But no, that's why we have the best productions crew in college sports. They know how to deal with it. They know how to manage it. But don't ask those guys and gals what it's like on those weekends. They may look at us like, yeah, you guys don't have to do. You don't have to do all the work.
Busier than not,
that's
right? Yeah,
that's exactly right.
As always, appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
All right, Ross Bjork on the January Town Hall here in Aggieland in the south end zone of Kyle Field. Our thanks to our producer Matt Simon and our director McCarty Cummings. We will get word to you soon on when the February Town Hall will take place. We'll see you then, Aggies. So long.